Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from around the world. My name is Joanne Duklas, and I'm the Executive Director for the GDN Network. Welcome. Today is our conversation about AI and recognition. I'm quite excited to be joined by Jasmin and Aleks, who are going to share more about their organizations. And then we're going to dig in deep to understand the tension between the two, the opportunities, and the possibilities. Thank you so much for joining us, friends. Jasmin, thank you on behalf of ACEI and ACE. And Aleks, thank you on behalf of Scholaro, patrons and signatories of the GDN. And for those of you who are interested in that, Amalia will put the URL in the chat. The other thing, before I introduce my colleagues, you have the freedom to send out emails in the chat to each other, send us links. We're keeping track. We're going to be saving those links and posting them on the recognition website of the GDN. I can't thank you both for joining us. Hello, hello. How are you both?
Very well. Thank you, Joanne. Great to
Excellent,
be here.
thanks.
Yes. So maybe I'll start with Jasmin. Jasmin, I know you are the CEO and founder of your organization, and you lead the association that both of you are part of. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about yourself and the organizations.
Okay. Well, I'm the founder of the Academic Credentials Evaluation Institute, which is a private organization that engages in international education research. And based on that, we provide the credential evaluation service to our colleagues here in the United States and also overseas that face questions about either dubious documents or simply need assistance with understanding the comparability of one academic program from one region to their education system. I founded the company back in 1994, and a few years after that, feeling there's a void in our field, that there's this sort of absence of consistency and in some ways, absence of standards. We were seeing varieties of educational comparabilities coming out from various organizations, and we felt that we need to have some standards and best practices in place. So a number of us formed the Association for International Credential Evaluators, or ACE, a nonprofit professional association that allows organizations such as Alex's Scholaro to apply for membership. We go through a very rigorous vetting process, screening, site visits. It's as close to an accreditation process as one can get in our field. But our intention has been collaboration, coming up with standards of best practices where we all agree that we're going to view some general concepts in the world of credential evaluation, and that we're not going to operate sort of rogue, but we have this sort of a think tank. We come together, we discuss very critical issues. And now AI is on top of the list. We
Yeah.
meet once a month. We meet once a month in a forum called Credential Forum. And based on that, we walk away with some understanding that, okay, great, we all agree on these key issues. One of the issues that we addressed was AI. Last year, we worked on a position paper, and that can be found on the ACE website. And my colleague Aleks will also post a link for that. But that kind of shows to you the work in progress. AI is new. Everyone is on a race to be kind of the first out the gate. And so we're keeping a close eye on that and how it impacts our industry.
It's a good point, and I'll be asking the audience some questions, and I'll ask you to use the chat when I ask the questions because I'm kind of curious. And I'm going to start with my first question before Aleks chimes in. And that question, while he's formulating and sharing with you about his organization, is essentially how many of you have used AI in the last week? So just put yes or not at all in the chat for us, if you wouldn't mind. Aleks, tell me a little bit about you and Scholaro. I mean, how does this fit in with the topic as well, the work you do?
Thank you, Joanne. So I joined Scholaro after over a decade of working in traditional credential evaluation agencies, in university admissions and recruitment. And the reason I did so is because of the synergy between myself and the founder, between expertise in international comparative education and technology. And we both saw that technology is the way to move forward with modernizing a process that really did not change for 40, 50 years, past minor adjustments. So we've been working on things for over the years to really streamline the process, but make credential recognition more accessible to individuals wherever they may be located in the world, whatever their resources might be, and for whatever purpose they're looking this recognition, whether it's employment, whether it's further education, whether it's professional licensing, any and all combinations thereof. So I've been with Scholaro since 2013, and when I started out, we were producing those standard U.S. based credential evaluation reports, as known in Canada, credential assessment reports. But over the years, we've been modernizing it to take the busy work out of the process. One of the questions that I like to ask admissions folks or my credential evaluators is, "What do you love about your job?" And nobody ever says data entry. Nobody ever says calculations, right? So this is just some of these obstacles that we're working with our tech partners to streamline. And I love to get into more about this as we incorporate AI into our processes.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And just to help both of you, as you were chatting, Alex, I would say 50% of our audience indicated that yes, they use AI. Several did
Mhm.
not respond, and I'm always intrigued when people don't respond. I wonder why. And we had a no from someone as well. Always intrigued why the no. And I think if people have insights, that please feel free to put them in the chat because I'd be happy to bring them into the conversation, your perspective and so on. So, just to get a bit more layer to this, Jasmine, aren't you also part of helping out Edge at Acro? The
Yes,
okay,
yes. Thank
okay,
you for
and
that. I serve as chair of the International Education Standards Council. It's
right.
kind of I would say, a nonpartisan body that ACRO has set up. We the representatives are from private evaluation organization as well as U.S. academic institutions, and we oversee the data that is contributed to the electronic database on global education, EDGE. This is the online source that many of us in the field will refer to if we want to get a quick look at a credential from a particular country and its comparability and its requirements. So it's a very dynamic platform, and those individuals that serve with me on Edge or on IESC that oversee that. I mean, we roll up our sleeves and we go in there, and it's a group of volunteers. So we really like the abuse. Let me say that because it's constant. A lot of the subscribers to Edge also present their questions to us. So there's constant research, constant upgrading. But it is a resource that is currently available, and I can see that that could also grow to be a much more robust source with the implementation of more of a AI influence.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in fact, Acro leads on the AI. And I know that Alex, you're also part of the Acro SEM faculty. Are they weaving into or planning to weave into, or do you, in your practice as a faculty member, do you weave in AI? Is it starting to become a feature in some of those types of conversations and PD moments?
The way acro trainings go is we teach the hard facts. We teach what's in Edge. We teach about international education systems, the recognition standards in whatever country we're teaching the curriculum in. But what sets us apart from reading a book on this stuff is that each faculty member shares their tips and tricks, so to speak, their favorite technologies, and those are changing from month to month. So I find myself rebuilding our recommendations on what we use to make our job faster every time we do this training, and we're absolutely incorporating AI into this topic. Another thing we like to chat about with our participants is the ethics behind AI and how we recommend they structure their institutional policies. You know, we've gone through institutions saying you must not use AI at all. Well, that's not a realistic policy today to something more concrete and finding ethical ways of incorporating new technologies while maintaining student data privacy, security, and conforming to other institutional policies already in place.
So one of the interesting things that I've actually, it sounds like a silly question, but with AI, if you have a paid subscription to an environment, an AI environment versus a non-paid, actually means that whatever you're doing with the AI, if it's a paid subscription, they don't use your information or your materials for any of their training, etc. Has that been your experience as well, Aleks? In other words, you can box it.
That is how they promote it.
That's how they
Um,
promote it,
that is
right?
how they promote it. We have to make our own decision about how much we trust that information.
Interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
Now, Scholaro is, if I'm not mistaken, you use AI. Can you tell us a little bit about that in the recognition space you operate?
Absolutely. So what we primarily use AI for is to streamline those mundane processes, those uh, time, those processes that take a lot of time that do not take a lot of evaluator skill. We use AI to eliminate those. We use AI to streamline our process. And to give you an example, research. We used to talk about ethical or responsible use of Wikipedia as a resource in credential evaluation. Now we're talking about responsible use of ChatGPT as a resource tool, as a research tool, pardon me, in the process. Have the volumes on a shelf in my office. They're collecting dust. I have a library of thousands of manuscripts in our shared electronic database. Going through those is time conclusive, and that is now turned into seconds. And we can ask real-time questions, but also ask for source information. So when an evaluator is searching for a university that allegedly existed in 2016 in Kenya. We don't have to open up a volume on Kenya from that time period, go to the Wayback Machine, find an archived website of a Ministry of Education, and find that information. We can simply ask a question where did such and such institution exist in 2016 in such and such a country? That prompt then will lead us to getting actual resources of where we should go to. So we're not walking into the library blindly. We're walking into a library with a roadmap. And that's one of the ways that AI really streamlined the process for our evaluators.
So, just for our audience, I'm going to ask this question now, and I'm looking for either yes or no as a response, but you're welcome to provide context if you like in the chat. How many of you in your place of work are using AI to support recognition work? So let us know. We're watching closely in the chat to see how many of you are leaning on that as another tool in your toolkit, another set of resources. So, Aleks, as you're doing that for recognition, and I do want to at some point explore the Lisbon Recognition Convention and the Global Convention in this, not in the details, but I do know that they contain phraseology, wording, etc., the importance of digital innovation, digital work, providing services and supports for our learners around the world, our applicants, etc. So we have that international instrument that's helping to nest our work. I appreciate that The US, for example, hasn't ratified the conventions, but everything you're describing to me as you talk through the principles, the commitment, the emphasis on quality assurance, these are nested in the conventions. So regardless of your country organization, it is clear that you're manifesting those principles. And I'll look for callouts as we go along to help our audience. But building on what you've said, Aleks, about the work you're doing in recognition and so on, is it tapping into your libraries? Is it tapping into external resources? When a search happens, where is it tapping? Just as an illustrative example.
The first step would be to tap our internal library because those resources are vetted as reliable primary and secondary source information. As you know, anybody can put anything on the internet, anyone can put anything on Wikipedia. So, learning from my experience in teaching how to use the internet for research, now we primarily want to use AI for searching our internal library for those vetted resources. If we run into a dead end, then we look outside. And that is when training on vetting resources comes in to determine is AI going to the places where we would go to find this information.
And I see Michael, my colleague from the Canadian CSIC at the Council of Ministers of Education Canada, has posted a link in the chat from University World News that talks about the five key factors for AI use in qualifications recognition. So thank you for that, Michael. We'll capture that resource. Um, Let me ask you something. When you're using it in these settings, and you've just written a paper at ACE, you've been exploring this, Jasmin and Aleks, you live it, both of you. Tell me, what do you think are the top five considerations that you would propose to your communities? It could be one, it could be five. I'm just picking a number, but what are the pieces of advice you have when using AI in recognition? And I'll start with you, Jasmin.
Thank you. Well, what Aleks said is uniform when it comes to using our existing information, our archival information. All of our evaluations and credentials are digitized. And for us, we have over, 30 years of data. So number one is to use your first work with what you have. If you have original documents that were vetted, these would be the sources that you will be using, referring to if you're doing the sort of comparability of credentials, just to ensure you are dealing with a legitimate document. But if you've exhausted your resources and now so much information is digitized, a lot of the publications that we have in our library are also now digitized and available. If you're Edge subscriber, the Acro Edge, you have access to those digital. So if all of that fails, which sometimes it does, but what we do is we also refer to AI platforms, any one of them, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Grok. I'm not a big fan of Grok, but I have been really looking into Perplexity right now because I find that in terms of content, they do really good analysis. So if I'm looking at, I want to do a study on a particular region in the world, and I want to look at, the student mobility and things like that, the prompts I would like to use seem to get better responses from Perplexity than ChatGPT. ChatGPT we refer to a lot when we're trying to draft marketing content or text. It's a lot of that. So you learn to kind of use these platforms accordingly to what their strengths and weaknesses are. My team has been really phenomenal how everyone's just jumped on it. We're not shying away from it. It's absolutely not. It's an absolute no, because this is where we're headed. This is where our society is heading. And for those of us who may think they're not using AI, we are currently very much using AI. Every technology you have around you is using some component of AI. But the point that we're coming here is how to ensure that this isn't just some wild beast that's running feral without any oversight. And when you brought the Lisbon Convention into the conversation, is the United States is not a signatory, but in a way, we are organically forming our standards. And I'm not just speaking for ACE, but all of our organizations, those of us who really care about what we do and the human-centric element of the work we do, we want to protect that. I'm so aware of that component, and I feel that this is there can be a beautiful synergy between technology and the human element. But as Aleks was saying, there's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of sort of that sort of data entry that can be cut out, and we're taking care of that with the AI, which is freeing us. Right now, I can see my team is a lot more engaged in research and kind of larger scheme projects than the sort of the nitty-gritties of number crunching and so forth. These are being addressed.
So you're kind of it's interesting. The article, it was shared in the chat, talks about human-centered. It talks about
Yes,
doing your research. It talks about all those different pieces. Aleks, you mentioned the saving time. You've mentioned it as well. But what I also heard, and I sort of want to pull that thread, is two things that I want to highlight and then get you guys to sort of react to. One is there are different AI tools that you can use for your work. You don't have to stick with one, and you need to interrogate each of them to see the quality of what they get back. So fit to purpose.
correct.
Yeah, so as an artist, there are some interesting AIs out there that I've been exploring just out of curiosity. They're great for art, but terrible for this. So it's fascinating to me to hear you say that. The
Well,
other,
there's professions now that are being formed, and one is to become a prompt engineer, how to be efficient in prompting the AI platform. So these are skill sets that are coming out. So for those who may be reluctant about, I wouldn't say embrace, but welcoming AI, just know that when technology comes forward, new avenues also open up. So new opportunities, new growth. The whole point is that we need to constantly upskill our team, our staffing. But the prompt engineer was something that I learned recently, is
fascinating.
how to
Yeah.
pose those good questions.
Well, and that gets to training. And so, Alex, when you talk about having created these tools at Scholaro, you must be reflecting on training of your recognition team. Let's explore that. Tell us some of the thinking, at least, around some of that space that you've been reflecting on.
Of course. So we can handle huge amounts of data analysis in seconds. We can streamline research that took days into minutes. What we can't accelerate is focusing on the human and keeping this a human centered process. And behind every credential, there is an individual with a unique scenario, unique case. And that is something that it takes a special kind of training to have evaluators recognize what is the unique situation of the learner behind this credential and how do we frame that in terms of the report that we're producing, the outcome that we're providing. Do we even begin to approach this situation? Can we solve this problem? Can we not? And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges with the training piece, but also one of the biggest rewards when that light bulb clicks and they start contributing their own experience with using technologies, using various resources, and how they can produce the desired outcome, something that Scholaro provides to our institutional and our individual clients. So in short, my answer would be keeping the human in the process is probably one of the most challenging parts of the training, but also one of the most rewarding.
So I'm
Yes.
going to ask our audience a question. And I'm going to ask for those of you, and it doesn't just have to be for recognition work. I appreciate there's some people in our audience that actually don't engage in that practice. Rather, they're systems people, they're researchers, they're technology people. But when you think about AI in your workplace, or even for yourself, how many of you are actually reflecting carefully on the type of training that you need or that your team or the people around you need in order to better and more ethically utilize AI? So, on a scale of 1 to 10, or actually for that question, just tell me yes, no. How many of you are reflecting on training as you're exploring bringing AI into your office, your practice, your work? And we'll see what we get back. And I'm seeing a lot of that interesting, individually and collectively, continuous, lots of yes coming in. People are thinking thoughtfully about use of the AI. And I'm fascinated, Jasmine, by the point you made about new roles emerging. When we think of
Mhm.
workforce development, when we think about even the recognition space, having new roles emerging that are helping us to better interpret or better work with or utilize AI is a fascinating space for me. And I'm curious, I'm gonna ask Aleks this question, but also you, Jasmine. Has it changed the roles in your teams as you're thinking about recognition? You mentioned this a little bit when you talked about transformative research, Jasmine. Let's pull that thread a little bit. How is it changing what people do on a daily basis?
In a kind of surprising way, I find that our efficiency has increased. We became highly digitized and started going remote even prior to COVID. And that was a sign that, oh, this is incredible. Why didn't we do this sooner? But sometimes it's uh, embracing technology can be a little bit, you're shy about it, you're exploring, but we took a chance. And now with implementing some components of AI, we're kind of finding that, oh, we're seeing efficiency pick up in the research area. The research area is phenomenal, particularly, as I said, when you use the proper prompts. You have to also, this is why AI still right now requires human intelligence. Because if you're not, as in our field, if you're not knowledgeable in your field, asking the right questions is almost non-existent. Anyone could ask a question of AI and say, well, tell me about the education system of XYZ, and it could spit out 5 items, but maybe 3 of it may not be accurate. So it's really important to have the basic knowledge in our field of credential evaluation of international education. But once you have that skill set, using AI is a tool, is a very helpful tool. It's, in my opinion, right now at the rate it is, it's not replacing humans. It's just going to be a useful tool, the way the internet was. The internet is something we're all using. It didn't put us extinct, or we're not inoperable. We're still using it, but it's expanding. And I feel the same thing with AI and the tools that we have. So efficiency has increased, but didn't mean that we've also, closed departments. In fact, our departments have expanded. So there's that positive.
So staying in the land of I'll call it the micro space in that inside the organization. So Aleks, you're both recognition experts. You're both in the recognition space. You both do credential evaluation, etc. How do you help your people? Say you get a new person coming in. And maybe this hasn't happened yet, but I'll throw it out there if you have thoughts around it, Aleks, is how do you help that recognition employee be thoughtful about prompts, be thoughtful about the research, not to just accept what comes back, but to help them continue to learn and interrogate, etc. Any thoughts around that?
Yes. So, to just echo your previous question and Jasmine's comments, we have not replaced human evaluators. It has made them more efficient, but it has become necessary to create positions, to hire additional developers and AI experts as we launch tools for evaluators and for the public to incorporate advancing AI technology into the practice of evaluation. For example, we don't let evaluators go rogue and say, here's internet access and a ChatGPT account, have at it. We design internal systems, which, yes, new staff can use them, but those systems are designed so that they search the correct databases. They search our internal library, for example, as opposed to the internet in general. When it comes to optical character recognition tools, it is programmed so that it captures the information that we want captured and doesn't capture the information that we
Mhm.
wish to remain private, that we wish to keep it internal, or we don't wish the public to put out into the I guess into cyberspace.
It's a good
So
point.
programming those
Yeah.
systems for efficiency really is something that we're currently focusing on, both in terms of training and allowing staff to use these technologies responsibly.
So I have it's a question from our audience, and thank you for whoever submitted it. It's a more technical question, but I'm going to ask it. When, Alex, when you go external, right? Because possibly you're using a specific platform for recognition. When you go external and they're doing research, is there an expectation or is there a mechanism available to triangulate between AI providers? So ChatGPT, Perplexity, Copilot. I don't know if you know the answer to that, Alex or Jasmine. Who can take this question for me?
So let me just re ask you. You're asking if the same question is presented to the various AI platforms,
Well,
and
that's
how do
one way
you?
of doing it.
Right.
Is there an
That's
expectation to do that?
that
And
is currently, yeah.
is there also alternative to that, or from an efficiency lens, is there a way to technically triangulate them so that
Yeah.
the search is doing that across? That's an interop question. So
That's
there's
an
that.
interrupt question.
The
Yeah.
first question is more about, is the expectation there or is the recommendation there to not just go to one? Because you have to pay for these things, so it gets expensive. The second question is the interop question.
Yeah. Speaking for ACEI, we we do explore more than one. Um, and that's almost kind of like just to double check and triple check. Um, let's say I pose a question about the accreditation of an institution. All of our digital archival material comes up empty. So we go to, let's say, we pose it to ChatGPT, but we always request for it to present us with sources and links. If we find that the source is saying it's a Wikipedia, we'll wait. We'll try another. And so Perplexity, even DeepSeek, all of these options are there for us. For us, we do subscribe to them because it's part and parcel of what we do. So we do use these platforms regularly. But the bottom line is the sources. So once we get the sources, then we pick the response that fits closely to kind of what our understanding. Oops, excuse me.
And Alex, did you want to add some color to that?
Um, we're in agreement on most things, Jasmine and I, but my response to this question is no, I'm not aware of a more efficient way to triangulate these searches other than asking different platforms the same question. But I recall a session at the GDN meeting in Oslo just a few weeks ago about the burgeoning of AI technologies. What we thought would take 10 years is happening in mere months. And this happened with the onset of the internet. And I'm dating myself because I lived through it. How many search engines have we used in our time using the internet? And to date, there is still no way to prompt a search in, for example, Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome and do one search, the searching both platforms. They're very proprietary. But just as the number of reliable search engines has shrunk, we all probably have a list of two or three preferred ones. There are others out there, but let's face it, a couple have emerged as the leaders. I predict the same thing will happen with AI providers, but at this stage, they're burgeoning, they're expanding so rapidly, and time and the industry will tell which ones will win out, which ones will sustain.
So what I'm hearing, and I want to pull this thread for our audience because it speaks to the ethics, it speaks to the guardrails, and I know some of the questions are coming in around some of this space. What I'm hearing is if you're using it actively in the workplace, a reference comes through, and I've seen this for myself. It's a great aggregator, but the reference URL can be like completely inaccurate. I did it on myself, which I encourage everybody to do because I was curious what would come back. And apparently, I have an MEd, which I don't. So the potential for error exists,
Yes.
even in terms of your personal brand. And so digging in and interrogating what comes back, not just turning over one leaf or using one provider, being a sophisticated user of AI seems to me that, you would want to be telling your teams, don't just lift one leaf, lift a few others and go deep. Make sure you're actually going to the source, which actually sounds like a practice for recognition that predates AI. Am I correct?
It is.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. And just as, we think of how AI streamlined language translation, even predating AA, digital translators have really um, made those paper dictionaries on our bookshelves obsolete. Well,
Mhm.
especially with the English language, but most other languages, words
Mhm.
have double or triple meanings. And how we understand things in credential evaluations is not necessarily how we phrase them in everyday terminology, in publications. So, combining that now with working with multiple languages, AI tends to get confused and says, well,
So Alex has frozen. So I'm going to keep going. Jasmine, do you have any
Okay.
comments in this space? I'm sure he'll come back in a minute.
Uh, I I think what Alex was saying just reminded me of a colleague of mine who's finishing his PhD at UCLA, and he was looking into his whole focus is on ethical practices by those who have AI platforms. And his pet peeve with ChatGPT is that much of the data that it gathered initially to launch was just based on questions posed on Reddit. And if you all are familiar with that platform, this is the wild, wild west. People post questions and people answer them. Doesn't mean they're correct answers, doesn't mean they have any references. So yes, I mean, these are the kind of the concerns. So just to get on a one of these platforms and ask questions, do not be 100% confident that the response you're getting is 100% accurate. Um, and as they say, these systems do hallucinate. They can make things up that sound really believable. So it still is important to, this is where critical thinking, asking some deeper questions. That's again, the word prompt keeps coming up. Knowing how to ask questions to really get to the bottom of it. So it's a learning curve. If we just jump on it, it's going to be a little bit of it's a learning curve. It doesn't come so easily.
So treat it with some degree of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
And
precisely.
yeah, and Alex, you cut out there. Is there any final point you want to make on this particular theme?
Just that AI allows us to work across languages, and we all know how translations is a nuanced art. We'll take it one step further with AI trying to incorporate all the nuances of all the languages that we are working in. And that's just one example of potential hallucinations, and that skill and judgment of the evaluator remains necessary. I know that's the echo of what Jasmine and I have been speaking about.
So that's at the sort of the local level. We have some colleagues on the line that are looking at higher level or legal, ethical considerations, or how to help their system, their network to ready for, prepare, etc. So one of the questions sort of falls in the realm of, um, you know, lawsuits emerging. So this comes from our attendees. And the question is around ethics. Let's say a particular AI provider is dealing with some kind of legal matter that evolved because of people using their platform. Do you feel that the field of recognition has started to consider the space of how to ethically assess those particular providers? And in some cultures, you're not guilty
Mhm.
until proven so, but and in others it might be different. But any comments around sort of that higher level? This company's just been sued for this. What do I do with that as an organization or association lead in my space from an ethical perspective? It's a tough question.
Mhm.
The law, just like in all
Yeah.
industries, are really catching up. It's going to take a lot more time for the law to adapt than these technologies are emerging.
So there's some reflexive things happening, legislative pivoting that needs to catch up. And so really it's keep a discerning eye. Is
Keep a
that fair?
discerning eye. There's a scientist, Jeffrey Hinton, who's regarded as the godfather of AI. And one of the things he said was that regulations, best practices, all of these should not be an afterthought. In this particular industry, when it comes to AI, not industry as us, but the AI world, um, we have to be forward thinking. We have to be ahead of it. So our whole legal system has to be 10 steps ahead of it, not try and deal with what happened yesterday, but what could happen tomorrow.
And this
So,
also brings back that notion of human-centered
yes.
as well as standards and so on. And the recognition industry has had some powerful standards and ethics
Mhm.
that it's emerged over the years before AI. Do you
Right.
feel many of those still hold true in the world of AI? So, for example, if you learn of a provider that's perhaps sketchy and you have evidence of same, you have mechanisms, policies, and practices in place that you
Yes.
can lean on. Is that fair to say? Okay.
I think speaking for our organization, for ACE, one of the principles of our membership requirement is full transparency. So every organization, when they generate their equivalency reports, supported with a comprehensive list of references that we'll use to reach that decision. These are not arbitrary decisions. These are based on peer-reviewed publications and research, whether the organization itself has conducted or by various experts in the field. So transparency is important. Explainability is important. Being able to explain how you came up with this particular analysis. So these are important structures that I sometimes have seen missing on some organizations that, as I said, this is kind of a race. And so I'm seeing a lot of new groups coming out that I'm not at all familiar who's touting that they're fully AI. And I'm wondering is that information generated from what? From what archival information? Because it's not just going to a chat GPT or creating your own proprietary AI, but what are you basing this on? Company like Scholaro, like ACEI, we have backup. We have years of documentation and research and archival material that we can use. But those that are not, that's where the question comes in. And for consumers and for institutions and organizations who want to work with an entity like that, these are the kind of questions to ask. How are you farming your information? Where is it coming from?
That raises, sorry, Aleks, you wanted to make a comment and then I'll raise my point. Go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with you, Joanne, that the mechanisms in the recognition industry that have existed in the past and the standards still absolutely apply, but we need to incorporate new definitions with new emerging technologies. And part of legal work really is defining and redefining what we mean by these new technologies and how we're going to apply existing standards to newly available processes. So defining and redefining is going to be a lot of our future
Very
work.
much.
So we need to stay not lazy, steward all aspects, stay in charge, etc. Jason raised an interesting point in the chat. So I just want to highlight it a bit because I'm quite intrigued by comments around this. He amplified that given privacy laws, perhaps some legal issues that have emerged, etc., and in fact, some rules, depending on where you're from, etc., that he's suggesting and that I've seen that prohibit automated decision making if it has an impact on what he terms the data subject, the person, I think is what he means. Uh, this is a good point because if you're leaning on your libraries, those libraries have been vetted and created by humans. Really, it's just like almost like a student information system tool you're leveraging, where it's actually saying, okay, we've done this research, we've vetted it already. We're just trying to find it faster. It's like a curation device. It's not full automation. And then once you get it as a human recognition expert, you're interrogating further, you're double checking the resources, etc. That's what you were alluding to, right, Aleks, when you were saying keep the person at the fore and keep being mindful that they're trying to achieve their dreams, etc. So your accuracy, your care and attention matters, regardless of whether you're using AI or some other digitization automation tool. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And to simplify the process even more, when we're automating any process, we program an equation if x plus y equals z, and 99 times that will produce the correct result. But the 100th time might be one exception. And as we know, as humans, our lives have so many unique aspects to them that algorithm may I'll use the new term, hallucinate and produce the
Yeah.
new results. So unless we're mindful and keeping a watchful eye on those automations, we won't be doing our diligence if we're not doing that.
And I will say, one of my colleagues, and I'm sorry, I can't, I think it was uh, Rod, mentioned that there's an importance, and he put this in the chat, so I just want to highlight it for the purpose of this, that you talked earlier, and it circles us back a little bit about the different platforms and their different capabilities, et cetera, and how we engage. But if some testing I think he's alluding to has emerged where if you're consistent and thoughtful in how you do those prompts, etc., some of the differences start to smooth. And it was interesting. Another colleague of mine actually submitted an experiment, shall we say, to different platforms with the same thing. And he was getting back sometimes the same, sometimes different things, but there was some streamlining there. So, how do you, in your practice, and what can system level guides, organizations, etc., ones that aren't at an institution, for example, or at a credential evaluation, how can they help bring your communities along, both the learners you serve, the community you operate in, and the employers, governments, and institutions and recognition bodies. How can these system level organizations help you as recognition experts to be better, shall we say, or to use AI more ethically and with a human-centered eye and an alignment with some of the guardrails out there, be they privacy regulations or what have you? How can they help you with ensuring good practice? Any suggestions there?
I would suggest that they start sharing their statements of ethics and what they are doing to promote ethical use of the technologies that are being developed. Um, we all want more transparency, but let's face it, many of us are not technical, so our understanding of the different technical backgrounds of these systems will be moot. But just having these companies that are launching new products also put out statements of ethics, what they believe in, and how and why they are launching new technologies, making updates, launching new versions would really be helpful to hear. Because that will help us identify those who are not making those statements.
Do you have any comments there, Jasmine?
I fully support what Alex says. That is the key thing, is asking these questions. How is their data resourced? Where is it? Where is it coming from? Because if it is not based on information that I suggested earlier, that is not based on peer-reviewed research, and if it is just being pulled from various websites and cobbled together to give this sort of response, that is something to be questioned. So the word is repetitive, transparency is important, and accountability and explaining how things are done. That's how you can understand if you are dealing with an entity that is simply just generating things by an automated tool, or someone who has the expertise and has developed this, or is fully knowledgeable about what the product is that they're developing and presenting to you. So
So,
what I'm trying to say is it needs to have it has to be cooked. It has to be really kind of have all the ingredients that make for the proper approach towards credential evaluation. If it just means a non-expert sitting behind a computer and just saying, well, I can just tap into Edge and tap into this and create this sort of AI platform that you could then just, type in a credential and you get this answer, that is not going to be a useful tool, because it's not going to provide you with how was that derived? How did that come about?
so system level organizations, et cetera, who are supporting your work or near your work, et cetera, um, providing sort of the top things to consider, the importance of the human centeredness, et cetera, the importance of managing change. I mean, and Michael raised an interesting point in the chat about transparency.
Mhm.
You raised it as well, and I didn't even have to ask about it. The importance of being transparent about how you're using AI and the expertise behind it to cook that perfect pie, shall we say.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I do have a question from Q&A, and I'm just going to raise it. But before I do, are any of you familiar with the term vibe coding? Because if you're not, I'm not sure we can answer this question. Have you come across it? I personally haven't.
I have not. But then
No.
again, I'm not
Okay.
I'm not in the I'm not the
So
tech
the
mind.
Yeah, so the colleague that asked me about to ask the question about vibe coding, maybe I would suggest that in fact you ask your question openly in the chat and see what comes back. There might be some other technology experts in the chat. There's also another question that one of our colleagues raised, which was I think one you've alluded to, and I just want to pull the thread on this. Um, Bad actors, shall we say? Or how do you, I mean, we know when we know about bad actors, we need to have guardrails around that. Maybe that's not the real question. The real question for me in my head is um, we are seeing transformation in the recognition world, transformation happening with how we verify credentials with all the new third-party organizations that are quite reputable, that are helping get credentials from issuing organizations to learners. I myself have created one. We know about these. They're important and they add high value to ensuring a document is direct from source and official. Um, with the recognition space and evaluation, we see AI helping with interpretation and language from Chinese, from Mandarin to English, for example, grade conversions, taking this grade to match the 4-point scale, and it's using first division, second division, etc., as an example. We're seeing AI saying, you know what, according to these resources, this is a recognized institution. So you talked a little bit about how it's making things more efficient. So how do we get comfortable with that? How is it truly transforming recognition? How is AI transforming recognition and changing perspectives in the workplace? Any comments around that?
It's
Uh,
definitely allowing our staff to focus on the bigger picture, the more human-centered elements. We've already alluded to this a lot in this webinar, but in terms of I don't even want to use the word bad actors, but irresponsible actors. We're going back on the old methodology of joining networks, vetting providers, and basically creating relationships, just like AICE is a network of credential evaluation agencies where we share information about different providers. Do we trust them? Do we not trust them? Have you used them before? Because I just encountered them. What do you think? And I'd like to circle back to why we're here and why we're all signatories of the GDN and the principle of creating a network of networks. It's just one more space where we can share information and not individually vet all the thousands of developments that come up across our desk, but work as a community to do
And the
I
that.
last
agree.
word to you, Jasmine, to augment Alex's comment.
Well, the first thing that I want to say is that my uh, understanding and awareness of the third-party platform providers that have been instrumental in, procuring academic documents on behalf of the students or applicants to us was because of my joining the GDN. That's how I became really familiar, but also comfortable. There was a surety that these organizations that are part of the GDN are participating, they're bringing their product to the forefront, and they're adhering to this sort of good faith approach that we have. So I think our field, in many ways, is just operating on good faith, kind of the gentleman and the ladies' agreement that we are trying to do the best we can based on the information we have and this level of trust that we have amongst each other. So we rely heavily on third-party digital platform providers, and I thank GDN for that because that's how our communication just began with these groups. So this is the important factor, is to have the surety, and you gain that by being members of associations and not operating in a vacuum where you are disconnected and not aware of what useful sources are available for you.
So I want to say thank you, my colleagues, for taking the time today to share your expert advice and guidance. You are both people who are deeply embedded in the world of recognition and credential and learner mobility. You know the different providers that are out there. I would also, we didn't pre-plan this about their shout outs about the GDN, but before I became executive director, I bumped into the GDN back in about 2013, 14. And it was that community that introduced me to the world of providers and thinking, etc., on the global level. The ethical standards were, of course, part of my work, but to see a community that actually has a signatory capacity where you sign to that was very powerful. It still works and is still critical in the present day. People who are interested in having their organizations become a signatory for not-for-profits, it's 500 euros a year, and private slightly more. But it gives you a rich network of networks to communicate with and connect with. It is 100% the seed of inspiration that led us to create MyCreds in Canada. 100% the guides, the source for technology, and so on. So it bears fruit when we work together. Thank you for joining us. I would invite my audience. We will, and Amalia has posted the link. We'll be putting this webinar up on our recognition page on the GDN site in an open source way. We'll try to do that for as long as we can. Eventually, though, they'll be in the digital hub, which is for our participant signatories and patrons only. We are holding our next batch of webinars starting in January, so we look forward to seeing you there. And we also have in South Africa, October 22nd and 29th, 2026, sorry. We have our wonderful, rich international annual meeting where all of you are more than welcome to attend. And we will have other surprises coming in the coming months. Our thank you to Jasmin and Aleks for taking time out of their incredibly busy schedules. Thank you for being patrons of the GDN and signatories and for continuing to push the envelope with the good work you're doing. Well done, people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joanne.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Aleks. Bye.